Hi everyone, I would like to welcome you again to this series. In today's video, we'll be looking at some of the essential Git commands that are needed to manage your repository effectively. We'll start by taking a look at some of the Git commands that are needed or required to set up a repository. We'll be looking at the Git init and the Git clone. From there, we'll move on to the commands that are needed for saving your changes, where we'll be talking about the git add and the git commit. From there, we'll take a look at some of the commands that are needed if there is a reason for you to undo any of your commit or any of your changes. We'll be looking at the git revert, the git remove, and some other git commands under this particular context. Then we'll move ahead to the commands that are needed for syncing. We'll talk about the git remote, the git fetch, the git pull, the git push. What are the similarities and what are the differences? Then we'll wrap it up with some of the git commands that are related to branching, where we'll talk about the git branch, the git checkout. For the purpose of this video, we'll be using the command prompt interface on our Windows machine. Welcome again to my channel, Tech Talk with Baba Femi. So, like I've said, we'll be using the command prompt interface for the purpose of this training. We'll go ahead to create a folder. I'm going to call these Git repos. So let me cd into this particular repository. It's still a folder. We've not made it a repository. Now I have, my first folder, which is the Git repos. This folder will encapsulate all the other folders that I'll be creating for each of these commands. So what I'm going to do is to create another folder for the Git init. I say Git init and cd into that folder. It's not a repository, it's still a folder. So now I'm going to make it a repository. So like I said, the first command to start with is the git init. So when you type in your git init, what this does is this is going to initialize your folder. When we say it initialize your folder, it creates a subdirectory, which is the .git subdirectory, and also it creates a master branch for you. So making it, a Git repository. So I'm going to run that particular command to say git init. Even when it's an empty folder, it's still going to initialize it. Now, that particular folder has been turned to a Git repository. I can go ahead, to start running the other commands. Since I will be showing how the Git clone works, I won't want to make use of this particular repository because the Git clone comes with, that particular repository you are cloning has already been initialized. So that's why I'm not going to be using it. So I'm going to create, I'm going to go back, step back, and I'm going to make another folder, call it, Git, call it the Git clone. Let me seed into this folder. So if I'm to clone, I think I already have, a particular repository here, which is, this repository has been initialized, like I've said. Now, if I'm to clone, I'll click on this clone. Then you can see I have different options. We have the HTTPS, the SSH, and there is another one which is the Git. That one comes with no authentication. So for the HTTPS, sometimes you might be required to at least, clone with a Git credential, especially when you have a private repository on. So if that is the case, then you might be required to at least have this Git credential. But for now, I'm not going to generate it except if I'm being asked. The SSH also, you need to create a key before you can actually clone using SSH. So for the purpose of this training, I will be making use of the HTTPS. What I need to do is to copy the URL of this particular repository. So copy that, and I will run this command to say git clone, and I need to just put in the URL I just copied, and this is going to clone that particular repository. So like I've said, when you clone a particular repository, that means you've actually initialized that repository also, because the repository is already initialized. And that's why I didn't run this particular command on the git init folder I created earlier. I'm going to go back to my git init repository. I'm just going to do cp. I'll go back to my git init. Yeah. So here I'm going to continue with the other command. To start with, I'm going to start with the git config. What this does is you are able to set some parameters like a username, like your email address, so that whenever you are committing to this particular repository, you know that's that your username and your email will be appended to it. This let us track who is actually making a change. So there are three ways to doing this. Is either you using the local flag, or you're using the system flag or the global flags. So what does this flag does? So this is what I was saying. You have the local, you have the system, or let me say you have the local, you have the global, and you have the system. So these three these three flags are actually different from each other. Their function are actually different. For the global, when you set your username to be local, that means you are setting it up for this particular repository. If I switch over to another repository, that username will not be valid. When you talk about the global, for the particular user that is logged into the system, you know, if you set the username and email address using the global flag, that means for the user that is currently logged into the system, regardless of the repository is creating, that particular username and email will be appended to all the repositories. As for the system, regardless of the user that is logged in, so this is going to be the machine wide username and email address, regardless of who is logging in. That means all the repository these users will be creating, that username and name will be created or appended to all the repository they are creating. So let's start with I'm going to be using the global. I'm going to be using the local. I can do the git config, and I will use the local flag. Then the next thing is user.name. I can now set what my username will be. Let's say Bafemi. Yes. Now, if I do git config, user.name, you should have what I just set. I'm going to set the email address also. So using the same command, but a different property now. Git config, I'm still going to use the local. And I say user dot email. This is, I will set this to Femi at DevOps.ng. So I can do it feed, no, user dot email. And this should give me, what I just said. That means if I make any commit to any of those, any folder, any files in this repository, this username and email address I just set will be appended to that commit. So the next thing is moving away from setting up a repository. Let's start adding files, and folders to this repository. And we'll do our commit. So how do we even save our files and folders? So let's start by creating some files. In this particular repository, I'm going to create some files. So I'm going to do echo. This is the first file. Then let me give it a name. Say first file .txt. Yeah. So if I do git status to check the status of my staging and working repository. So you can see I currently have, there is no commit yet. However, I have a file that I need to save, which is actually an untracked file. So for me to add this to the working repository, I need to commit it first. So I need to save it first and commit it. So to save, we'll use the git add and the name of the file. This is the first file, that's txt. Now if I do the git status now, you can see that that particular file is being tracked. However, is not yet committed. So the next thing I need to do is to commit this particular file. How do we commit? So to commit, I use the git commit and a message, very important. I say this is to um this is let's make it professional. Added post txt. Now this change has been made. So if I do a git status, you should not see any file. We've done the commit. So to check, you can do the git log, just to check for checking. Now this shows you, the last thing that has been committed, and this is it. The author, like I said, now we have the name, and then we have the email address of the person that have done this commit. Then the last thing, this is the last commit that has been done. So this is how we save. So what if we have multiple folders that we're trying to save? Let's create two folders. Say second file. I say second dot txt. Oh, that's not gonna create a file for me. So second dot txt. Same thing. I go ahead to do same thing. But here I'm going to change this to third. So sorry. Now, if I do the git status now, this will show you, we have two files. So the other time when I wanted to commit, I used the last time when I wanted to save, I used the git add, then the name of the file. But now, because I have multiple files that I want to commit, because I have multiple files I want to save, what I need to do is to use the git add, and a lot to say I want to add everything. So if you check the git status now, this is going to show you that all the files have been added. So the same way we've done our first commit, you can also do this. But I'm going to keep this file here. I'm not going to commit them for the next command I'll be running. So the next thing is, how do we even undo any of these changes? So I'm going to create another file and keep that on track. So I'm going to do first. Yes, I can just do first. And the other file is first file. So then I can say first.txt. So if I do git status now, a very important command for you to run. So the git status shows that there is a file that has been added. However, this file is yet to be tracked. So when you say it's on track, that means you've not saved it to the Git repository. So to do this, now I want to use, I want to undo this particular change. To start with, I'm starting with the git clean. So the git clean, what it does is it undo whatever has not been tracked. So if I click git clean, I need to check with a flag n to say what will be removed. And you can see only the first.txt will be removed. The git clean cannot undo whatever has been added, even when they have not been committed. So the git, so what I'm going to do, there is another flag, that you can use, which is the I, shows you, all the command that can be run. If I click the one, this is going to, clean this particular item for me, but I'm going to quit. So the last flag, that is what I'm going to be using, which is the force. So I use the git clean and I force it. So this is going to remove. So if I do the git status now, you would see that particular file has been removed. What about if my file has been added? So if this has been added, I can do the git reset. So git reset, and there are three flags. You have the soft, we have the mix and the add. Since I want to undo, I'm going to be using the add. So what this does is it cleans everything, whatever has been added now. So it takes it back to the last time my first file was added. So if I do the git status now, you see those guys, they have been cleaned off. And let's say git log. So currently that's actually taking me back to the last time, the first file was added. Now you can also do the git remove, which is if you've committed anything, you can remove it, using the git remove. So if I do the git remove head, so okay, so the git move remove, yes, you need to use it with the file also. However, let's say, let me just take it back to, so the first file, that was the first, even when they have been committed, and remove particular file. So you can see this has been removed. If I do the git log now, so now you have, this has actually removed my file, um so if I do the git status, you can see, that file has been removed and deleted. So that's what, the git remove does. Now let's go back. Let's go to the next one, which are, um, some of the commands that work with the syncing. When we talk about the git fetch, you know, um, the git, the git pull, git push. I'm just going to explain these ones. And we need the git remote also to be able to do this. So now I'm I'm going to start with the git remote here, because if you want to do your git fetch, your git pull, your git push, you need to have this particular this particular repository connected to a remote repository. So when we say a remote repository, not our local repository. Now, so if I do the git remote, so what you need to do is to have the add, and what will be the name of the remote repository. So normally, you set it as origin. I think that's in Azure. So you need to fetch, since, so that's going to be the name and the URL. So I'm going to add URL, which is the same URL, I've added before. I've added an origin, to this my particular Git environment now. I can also remove this. That means when I set an origin, that means I can push, I can pull from that origin. I can also, fetch from that origin. So if I'm to start with, let's say I can also remove this by saying, git remote, you know, then I can do the rm, which is the remove, then I can do the origin. So this command is going to remove whatever has been added. So I can do that, and this is going to, remove it. So I need to run this again to set this as origin. So the next thing is to do, our git fetch, our git pull, and also our git push. So I'm just quickly going to explain the differences. So for the git fetch and the git pull, they work almost the same way. The only difference here is your git fetch is going to fetch all your files and folders from the origin repository, the new commit. However, these changes are not going to be appended or made, on your local repository. For the git pull, it's going to fetch it and merge it with your local repository. That means, whatever has been committed on your origin repository will be, merged with what you have on the local. For the git push, whatever you're doing on the local, you can now, push it back to, the origin repository. That means if you make any changes on your local repository, you can push it back to the origin repository. And that's what the git push does. So the last set of commands, I'll be working with is the command that are related to branching. So the first one is going to be the git branch. You will notice that all the changes we've been making was actually on our master branch, which doesn't make sense. So what you do is, in a proper Git workflow, you create a new branch for any feature you are working on. And when you're done, you can do your merging. So I'm going to create a new branch, you know, and I can say, so if I do a Git branch now, this is going to list all the branch I currently have, which is only the master. Now, if I do the Git branch, and I can give it a name to say Git branch. So if I do git branch command again, this is going to list the Git. However, but I'm not currently in that branch. So for me to actually log into that particular branch or access that particular branch, I need what we call a git checkout command. So if I do a git checkout, I can say, the branch name, which is the git branch. So this is going to, switch to a new branch. If you check now, if I do a git branch now, you will notice that, I currently have myself log into the other branch, which is, so you can see, if I make any update now, it's going to be on my Git branch. The same way you've done this Git checkout, you can also create, a new branch while, you know, running your Git checkout command. How do we do this? So if I do Git checkout, I use the B flag, then I can say Git checkout, and this is going to automatically create a branch for me and switch to that branch. So if I do a git branch now, well, now you will see that we have 3 branches. So currently I'm logged into, the git checkout. So the last one is for me to just add some files and merge this file with the master branch. So I'm going to do, the echo and say git, so git branch merge test, and I'll just do, merge file, dot txt. I've created a file, if I do a git status now, this is going to, do the git add, that's going to be merge file, dot txt. So if you run a git status now, so nothing, you still have, so you have a new file and, have the other one, which is, the file I've deleted. Now, I want to actually commit this because I only deleted that file, I've not committed it. So if I commit it, that deleted file will be gone. So if I do a git commit and saying merging, no, let's say adding merge file and deleting source file. So that's mine, and that has been done. So if I do a git status now, so and if I do a git, let's do a git log. So you can see the only file I have in here is, the merge file, because the other file has been, so you can see here it has deleted, the first file, but still in my, master and git branch, that first file is still there because that commit has not been passed, to those branches. So to merge with master, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to master, which is the git checkout master. Then I'm going to run a git merge here. Git merge, the name of, is the git checkout launch. So this has merged. So if I do a git log now, so you would see that, that particular file that particular commit has been, done or committed to my master. So the same way, if I want to do this for the Git branch, I need to switch to the Git branch, and add my merge. So this is how, we manage our repositories using some of the important Git command. Thank you everyone, for watching this video. And I will be dropping my next video soon.